Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to present Caledonia Skytower. She's an artist, a storyteller with over 25 years of first world experience as a theater designer and an administrator. Since 2008, she has worked as a volunteer presenting literature live in the virtual world of Second Life, logging hundreds of hours to benefit a variety of charities as part of Shakespeare Library. She currently works in the first world as a narrator, artist, author, and as a consultant and contractor to nonprofit arts organizations. I'm pleased to present her session, Putting the Language Back into the Language Arts by Caledonia Skytower.
Thank you, Lear. You get huge props for saying Shawnee correctly. Thank you. Well, in the guidelines for this conference, it says that the communities of practice tracks are for those who support education or research, but who are not academics or directly connected to schools or educational organizations. My qualifications certainly fit this. I have a university degree, postgraduate studies, and I have even taught in my field at the community and university levels. But I do not possess academic credentials beyond that, nor am I even technically an educator. What I do possess is 30 years experience in the nonprofit sector and closely related fields to the arts. During the past decade, my focus has been turned to literature, inspired by those years of work in the performing arts. The experiences gained on that journey are what inform the particular point of view that I'm sharing with you today. I know when I attend conferences, I'm always hoping for three things. The validation of at least one idea I already have in practice, that little moment of, I knew it, at least one fresh perspective that challenges my imagination to try something new, because refreshing our minds should be why we're here. And the grace to let what doesn't work for me go as much as possible and simply use the ideas that I can work with. And I hope that my presentation can fulfill those three quantifiers of quality conference experiences for you today. We live in a world where language and how we express ourselves through it is becoming increasingly compressed. From the sound bites of the late 20th century to complete thoughts expressed in 140 characters or less, and the escalating conversational use of acronyms, words, and phrases condensed into symbolic form as they surround us now. We use language on a daily basis in a manner radically different from our ancestors of even a century ago. And this is the natural evolution, and it reflects change, the pace of the culture and the particular moment in time that we're in. It cannot help but also reflect in our storytelling, for stories are an intrinsic part of who we are, hardwired into the human psyche. From the invention of television through the virtual worlds of today, technology has provided increasing options for telling stories with images. Hi, Jacob. Visual storytelling is not new. Prehistoric cave paintings throughout Europe, China, Japan, Australia, and parts of North America all illustrate, literally, that early humans used pictures to tell stories. But did they? Really? Were the pictures the stories by themselves, or a way to enhance the spoken word and leave a record of it? Perhaps they were both. What is history but the factual, sometimes factual, storybooks of lives, events, and times gone by? Early hunter-gatherers may have used these walled galleries to record their favorite tale of my near-death experience with the really big mammoth that got away, told many times over and over again around a fire. We live in a time where storytelling has become, and will continue to become, increasingly visual. The cave paintings have come to life. They move, and with the right accessories, we can engage with them in all dimensions. Now, I suggest that pictures are only ever part of any given story. Words are important too. Words matter. Pictures and images give us the form of the story, but not necessarily its entire emotional context. Words and pictures are inextricably linked and always have been. The imagery feeds the words, and the words inspire the imagery. When you have both, you have a more complete story. Pictures can suggest to us how many horses there were or which warriors were in chariots and which were on foot. But pictures cannot tell us that the sun rose on an island incandescent with courage, or that they were deaf to all else but the trumpets of war. They could hear nothing else amidst the tramping of feet and the hoarse shouts of rage and the beating of the drums and the thunder of the hooves and the cacophony of the war cries. Images provide us with the detail and the elements of context. Words express the immediacy of an emotional moment. Pictures can suggest to us that it is 1922, that there is a grand party underway somewhere outside of New York City, a party bigger and more lavish than any of us has ever attended. Pictures can capture a moment of that revelry. Pictures can tell us, but pictures cannot tell us with the same efficient expressiveness that every Friday, 5 crates of oranges and lemons arrived from a fruiterer in New York. Every Monday, these same oranges and lemons left his back door in a pyramid of pulpless halves. There was a machine in the kitchen which could extract the juice of 200 oranges in half an hour if a little button was pressed 200 times by a butler's thumb. At least once a fortnight, a corps of caterers came down with several hundred feet of canvas and enough colored lights to make a Christmas tree of Gatsby's enormous garden. On buffet tables, garnished with glistening hors d'oeuvres, spiced hams crowded against salads of harlequin design, and pastry pigs and turkeys bewitched to a dark gold. In the main hall, a bar with a real brass rail was set up and stocked with gins and liquors and with cordials so long forgotten that most of his female guests were too young to know one from the other. By 7 o'clock, the orchestra has arrived, no thin 5-piece affair, but a whole pitful of oboes and trombones and saxophones and viols and cornets and piccolos and low and high drums. The last swimmers have come in from the beach now and are dressing upstairs. The cars from New York are parked 5 deep in the drive, and already the halls and salons and verandas are gaudy with primary colors and hair shorn in strange new ways and shawls beyond the dreams of Castile. The bar is in full swing, and floating rounds of cocktails permeate the garden outside until the air is alive with chatter and laughter and casual innuendo and introductions forgotten on the spot and enthusiastic meetings between women who never knew each other's names. Now, while I am clearly an advocate of words, it might interest you to know that my academic training is on the visual side of storytelling, as Lear suggested. As a student of theater, learning to design scenery and costumes for plays, musicals, and operas, I was taught to always look to the words first. Scripts often come with diagrams, which are the stage manager's notes from the first original production. That's not designing for the story. I was taught this many doors, that window over there, details which must be taken into account, of course, the machine of the story, but not its dramatic or emotional content. I was taught that design was more than the sum of its architecture, that it was a living, breathing member of the cast, and that it was up to the designer to determine what role the environment played in any given drama. Was it adversarial, reflective? Did it invoke the past, the present, or the accumulation of the past into the present? Where did the words of the playwright define the setting, and where did they ooze out of the bricks and mortar of the play to be something more? So many permutations of what part environment could play, and each one of them to be found in the clues of the text, in the words. It was up to me to find those clues in the text and not simply create the literal or historic reality of salons and verandas, gaudy with primary colors and hair shorn in strange new ways and shawls beyond the dreams of Castile. My job was to use the language of the script to inform the creation of a place where an emotional moment, air, alive with chatter and laughter and casual innuendo and introductions forgotten on the spot, and enthusiastic meetings between women who never knew each other's names, could take place. Again, the imagery feeds the words inspire the imagery. I could devote another 40 minutes sharing with you how that process of scenic design works, but that's not really the focus of this presentation. For those interested in exploring the nature of narrative design, I can recommend a related workshop session happening tomorrow afternoon on Seanchai Libraries' installation on Linden Endowment for the Arts Region 9. Sister Butta will be doing a workshop entitled Which Came First, the Story or the Build at 1 p.m. SLT, and you will find information about that session and also references to all the other things that I will reference, all the other resources that I will reference in a note card if you click on the green spiral box to my right by the microphone where Lear announced me. So words. Language is important. The storytelling experience is richer and more meaningful if we have both. Now, how is this already being used to enhance language arts education? Well, in the physical world, I work as a contractor for my state's arts organization, coordinating a program sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Poetry Foundation, Poetry Out Loud. This 11-year-old program was initiated by poet Dana Gioia during his chairmanship of the NEA. It is a poetry recitation program for students grades 9 through 12 and works in a spelling bee style competition that begins in classrooms all over the United States. Students have access to an online anthology of over 900 poems, everything from Shakespeare to John Donne to contemporary poetic voices like Jamal May and Sherman Alexie. They aren't reciting poems that they have written themselves. They must choose from the anthology. The challenge for them is to gain a meaningful understanding of a poem written entirely out of their immediate zone of familiarity. Their recitations are evaluated in 5 criteria areas that test their technical abilities of recitation, but also their evidence of understanding of the poem and how effectively they share this emotional content in a way that is not theatrical, but which brings the audience into the world of the poem and perhaps helps them to see the work in a new way. Now, I still remember the first year that I had that job, and a 16-year-old recited a poem that I have never really liked. I can't explain to you why I have never really taken to Lord Alfred Tennyson's The Charge of the Light Brigade. I mean, to me, it's just reading it off the page. There's not much that I can connect to. Somebody else's patriotic expression, a martial statement of duty, and all these are things I could appreciate. But they have no life for me when they're bound up in Tennyson's meter and his repetitive structure. And I would consider myself a fairly broadly literate adult. Yet somehow, this 16-year-old showed me something new about this poem. She taught me something about those words that I hadn't seen before, and she achieved it through how she spoke the words. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them volleyed and thundered, stormed with shot and shell. Boldly they rode, and well, into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell, rode the 600. We just had our state Poetry Out Loud competition last weekend. And 13 students out of 21,000 from across my state represented 12 schools out of over 70 that participated this year. That's a lot of words. Students advanced from the classroom to school-wide competitions on through to regional and or state competitions. The national competition takes place in Washington, D.C. on May 3rd and 4th. Students at all levels of this program eagerly say how different it was and is to say the words rather than just see them, how poetry now had so much more meaning and relevance for them. Teachers consistently share how inspired their students are and how engaged they become in the poems themselves once they get the poems on their feet, as it were, and off the page. As a side note, I say this because Lear hasn't heard, this isn't Lear's text. my state had the national champion in 2013, and there was recently on the NEA blog an interview with him in which he said that poetry snuck up on him. He had no idea that it could be so meaningful. So, our state poet laureate, Dr. Todd Marshall of Gonzaga University, reflected on the program by referencing W.H. Auden from his book, The Dyer's Hand, where he encourages young writers to memorize thousands of lines of poetry and to write out the poems of others in longhand, to feel the making of the poem, to inhabit the actual physicality of putting those words on the page, to experience emotionally, kinesthetically, intellectually, a work of art. Dr. Marshall continued, the students involved with Poetry Out Loud have invited particular poets and particular works into their hearts so that they may fully know them and so that they might share them with others. That is a stunning relationship, a generous gift, and the most powerful of educational dynamics. To carry a work of art inside you is to have art become a part of you. To want to share it with others is to recognize the gift that a work of art can be. Such learning shows an openness to the nuances of a complex world and to the perceptions and viewpoints of others that might create bridges across centuries between races and gender identifications and openness of spirit. The rest of Dr. Marshall's comments are actually in a blog post, and you can find that on the reference card too. So back to our imminently visual virtual world. Hang on a second, let me check something. There we go. So back to our eminently visual virtual world with storytelling opportunities all around us. What are the ways for us to further enhance the relationship between words and images as we explore how to engage through language arts and inspire or nurture the tales of the future? What are the opportunities the virtual world provides? Well, let's take a quick look at the current approaches in practice. And you've seen examples of these practices here at this conference. There is, of course, gamification. Objective-based learning. The learner enters the educational environment at a specific entry point, and their goal is to navigate that environment, following clues or collecting tangible tokens as they proceed to emerge at an end, having been exposed to concepts and ideas in a hunt or quest format. Part of this approach can involve applying the knowledge gained directly while on their journey, solving of clues, or overcoming of barriers by applying what they've learned. And this approach works singly or in groups. It's a standalone format which only changes or adjusts to the individual user at its more complex levels. Every user gets roughly the same experience. It's not a new concept, applying gaming tools and structure to a non-gaming application. The very first applications of gamification were in marketing with the advent of frequent flyer programs. Then there's museum style. Now, these builds invite free, unstructured exploration of an environment with no planned interaction or end result motivation. The builds are static and informational, offering note cards, text panels, information text that's delivered in local chat, even free items. And they're often historical or documentary, attempting to depict a real place or real event using a historical tableau. You can actually find these sorts of environments all over virtual worlds. They were some of the very, very first educational builds. As an example, the University of Texas at Austin in Second Life has a very detailed Alamo installation. Now, sometimes the environments are created and left and nothing ever happens, or sometimes they can be found ending up as part of an active role-play culture. Outside of RP, these experiences can be engaged in singly. The experience is self-selected. Users explore and click where they choose, and these builds can be really great for a solo learner. And then there's project-based engagement. and where the ability to control the tools provided by a virtual platform make it more effective and efficient to design and provide an educational interactivity. My favorite example is the chemistry lab project created by Wendy Keeney-Kennicott at Texas A&M University and Kurt Winkleman at Florida State Institute of Technology. Many of you are familiar with their study, which was funded by a grant from the National Science Foundation, of the differences between students, first-year college chemistry students learning in a traditional laboratory setting and those learning in a virtual laboratory setting. In their results, they found that the virtual laboratory provided clear strengths in student focus and retention, while taking advantage of virtual world's ability to minimize barriers to learning and social interaction based on proximity. These are all valid approaches with potential for success. They're economically viable. They can be comparatively quickly created, efficiently adjusted, and for the most part, they can be packed and unpacked and refreshed for future use. It's important that we have a variety of approaches in learning, not only for the classroom, but for virtual learning of all kinds and for all ages. Not every individual learns and processes information in the same manner. Some people are visual learners, some people are tactile learners, some are auditory learners, and there's no one way to learn. Therefore, there can be no one way to teach. As one of my favorite professors used to say over and over again when our budding young intellects wanted to know the ultimate right way in which something should be accomplished, there is no such thing as right, only what works. When we look at successful educational systems around the world, they tend to acknowledge this reality by focusing on the learner and how the individual best absorbs and processes information. Unfortunately, in the United States, we have to struggle in recent decades with a one-size-fits-all concept of education that increases the rigidity of curricular expectations and often leaves some students out because it's ultimately ultimately system-focused and not learner-focused. Virtual learning provides an opportunity to present a variety of tools that can begin to redress this imbalance. So, we have any number of basic models to use as a starting point. We do. We have a visual environment, so we build and create. Virtual learning has come a long way, and I want to challenge us to envision what our next steps are. What is on the horizon, specifically with language arts learning? Technology is not static, nor are the opportunities that it provides to chart new courses. One of the strengths of the chemistry lab study is its ability to tap into one of virtual world's rarely acknowledged strengths, at least rarely acknowledged in an educational context. It's common enough practice in corporeal chemistry classes to have students in labs working in teams as a community when they needed to choose that format because it kept their data consistent for the study between the control group and the kids in the virtual lab. It simultaneously took advantage of one of virtuality's great strengths, breaking down barriers to social interaction based on proximity. Social interaction has educational opportunities. As many of you know, I've worked with Seanchai Library, promoting literature and stories in virtual worlds through live voice presentations for many years now, serving as lead staff since 2012. And it's no secret that I'm an advocate of the benefits of spoken word. So let's look at the possibilities of language learning and social interaction in the context of the work of Seanchai Library. Seanchai's founder, Derry McMahon, who possesses a Master of Science in Library Sciences, took into account the value of community experiences when she founded the program back in March of 2008. She felt that you could not underestimate the need for humans for social interaction when considering virtual worlds. Why would you sit logged into an otherwise empty region and read a book online? If you're in a literature-themed environment, well, you'd have to keep switching from reading to looking about. That's not completely user-intuitive, but it could be an interesting experience. Maybe the literature is streaming in audio. That comes with a whole new set of technical challenges and legal limitations, and it doesn't really promote a high rate of return visits. Once you've experienced it, great. Yet what if someone else came along while you were there? Maybe you could discuss the story and experience it with them. Why do people spend their lindens on wall-sized screens for their virtual homes and rent movies that they could just as well watch alone on Netflix or a service like Amazon Prime Instant Video? It's because they can share the experience of watching the movie with someone they wouldn't otherwise be unable to share that experience with. So Derry chose to take a gamble on a library where the collection was not URL links or note cards. She fostered a library based on literature, on language, as a dynamic, essential, living ingredient of human existence. Literature is more than print. She was inspired by the tradition of the Irish Shakespeare, born of the ancient bards who were an essential part of any court or kingdom in Ireland. The Seanchai was the poet, the historian, the conscience of the kingdom, and even sometimes of the monarch themselves. They recognized the importance of recording songs and stories and repeating them for joy and pride and relevance. The human experience captured and reflected in every tale. Shakespeare Library is a library out loud, and our collection is built one story at a time, one book at a time, shared live in voice. So how is that different from reading a book online? That's a very valid question. After all, at many of our sessions, you'll find avatars sitting in chairs with a presenter in front of them, kind of like we are now. And its appeal, frankly, sounds a little limited. But our story sessions and our settings vary broadly, from those with just a few simple props to those that almost completely obliterate the library structure or the venue itself. Submerging our guests in the environs that are evocative of the story being presented. And all our options within this range that are valid. For one important reason, there's simply different degrees of immersion within the same opportunity. The opportunity itself is unique to virtual worlds to participate in an experience that is both intimate and communal. What do I mean? When you listen to a story live, presented well, the technology of the transmission makes the experience very intimate on the individual level. Whether you listen on speakers or on headphones, it feels like the story is being told just for you. It's very personal. Yet the technology, yes, Cassie, enables you to share this moment with others experiencing it similarly. We encourage our guests to use typed local chat to share their thoughts and feelings to the stories being presented. Now, that would be rude in the real world, but in the virtual world, it serves as a vehicle for building community, a community of literature. Relationships are formed over shared story experiences. Not pre-recorded, the presentation is inevitably not perfect. Like this presentation, it's not perfect, which gives it a wonderfully flawed, human, immediate, emotional accessibility that is unique to that specific moment. It is experienced personally and shared with others. Words, language in a virtual setting brought off the page and onto its feet. Now, breathe deep and relax, and let me demonstrate what I mean. Give this a moment. An old man had many sons. He knew in his heart of hearts that his sons loved one another. Yet, in day-to-day dealings, they did not show this. They could not seem to get along. The old man was distressed and tried many different ways to entreat his sons to resolve their disagreements respectfully and to reflect the love that he knew was in their hearts with their deeds and actions. He exhorted them to live together in harmony. Stories, entreaties, none seemed to work. His sons were always falling out with one another, in front of each other, in front of the entire village. Everyone in the village knew about the brothers squabbling. When to stop for meals, too much mud building the wall, too much clay building the wall, too little clay, you owe me this, you owe me that, your wife's soup is too hot, that fruit you gave me was rotten. There was no subject, no aspect of their lives that the sons were not ready to openly and publicly argue about. The report of the sons' disharmony spread far beyond the village. People in neighboring towns would cringe when they saw the brothers approach, knowing the litany of complaints and disharmony that would accompany them. As rumors of their behavior spread, their father's despair became great indeed. If they could just find a way to get along. Finally, the old man realized his days were approaching their end, and he knew he could not move forward into the world of the spirits until he found a way to bring his sons to embrace one another in unity. So, the old man declared that they would have one final great feast together. He had delicious foods collected and prepared in great abundance. The fire circle was made comfortable for the gathering with richly colored cushions, and the trees above and around were hung with lovely lanterns that looked like bright stars come to earth. All the sons came as they were bade, and with their families in tow, even with the beautiful surroundings and the amazing feast, the sons could not keep from being disagreeable to the old man, their father. He knew that this was his one final chance to teach this vital lesson to his sons. He called them to him, and as they settled into their seats around the fire, he produced a bundle of sticks. He turned to his oldest son, saying, "First one, take this bundle in its entire and break it across." The son, a tall and strong man, took the bundle and tried with all his might to break the bundle. But he could not. The bundle resisted his efforts to break it. Then the old man bade them each in turn take the bundle and try to break it with their hands. Each put forth all his strength, but the bundle resisted the efforts of every one. Then, cutting the cord which bound the sticks together, he told his sons to each take a single stick, as he himself took one. The old man held his stick high above his head and waited until all was silent. And then he waited a moment more before saying, "Observe, my sons." And he, old though he was, snapped the stick in two easily, and the sound of that snap reverberated around the fire circle in the quiet night air. And then he entreated each of them to break the separated sticks. And this was done, of course, with the greatest of ease. "You see, my sons, this is what I have been trying to teach you these many years, and what I want you to fully embrace as my final lesson to you. The power of unity. My beloved sons, do not let disagreements and petty misunderstandings come between you and make you weak, easily snapped by the slightest effort, for divided you will fall prey to your enemies. Bound together by brotherly love, you may defy every mortal ill, for in unity we are given strength." And that is a bundle of sticks, adapted from an original fable by Aesop. I love that story, I really do. In the winter of 2015, Seanchai Library piloted a program called Explore. And this approach combined elements of some of the models that we've touched upon with the live spoken word experience. The pilot was done with a real-world nonprofit partner, the Tacoma Little Theater in Tacoma, Washington, in the United States, a community-based theater that was founded in 1918 and is among the oldest such companies in the Western United States. Seanchai Library produced an augmented learning experience in support of the theater's production of The Great Gatsby, adapted for the stage by Simon Levy from F. Scott Fitzgerald's great American novel. We produced a three-dimensional study guide on a dedicated region on the Kitely grid of the open metaverse. The custom build was inspired directly by the imagery from Fitzgerald's novel. The Valley of Ashes, East A, the Buchanan Mansion, West A, Gatsby's Mansion, and Nick Carraway's rental cottage. The build also included over 4 dozen relevant links to the art, music, economic, political, and social trends of the early 1920s, including sections specific to early jazz, Art Deco, flappers, and Prohibition. Additionally, links to the entire canon of Fitzgerald's work were accessible in a gallery dedicated to the author, as well as biographical links to multiple sources on his life. As if that were not enough, the work of the theater company itself was also featured. Now, this is not the first time that someone in a virtual world has created a themed sim around a work of literature. We all know that. OS blogger Thurza Ember summed up Explore the Great Gatsby this way. Tacoma Little Theater has teamed with Seanchai Library to create a learning experience which is perfect for people of any age. This is certainly not the first literary sim in the metaverse, nor even in OpenSim. Both OS Grid and Craft have some lovely didactic builds, but while it may not be an original idea, if such a thing even exists, it is an exquisitely executed one. Seanchai Library has put together the fabric of the story, the bricks and mortar, if you like, in an original and beautiful way. What made this project different was several elements. The project came with its own entry portal, welcome center, and orientation area for those new to virtual worlds, and how-to information via tabs on the project website. Part of our partner agreement was that Seanchai Library would do the research and create the printed study guide that the theater would distribute to teachers whose classes would attend special weekday matinee performances of the play. The build contained all that research that went into the study guide, plus a wealth of additional resources. So if you went into the build, you got more than you got out of the study guide. Information on characters, key plot elements were all available on the Explore website. The project included 10 hours of live voice presentations from the novel. The book read in its entirety twice. The project was exposed to over 1,500 theater patrons and guests through Tacoma Little Theater performances, pre-show and at intermission via a big screen in the lobby of the theater, and a keyboard station where they could take control of the company avatar. Over 100 hypergrid visitors internationally experienced the project, including visitors from Italy, Switzerland, Germany, France, the Netherlands, and the UK. A parent contacted me after her daughter had been to the theater performance and experienced Explore in the lobby, and she said, "My daughter just came home from the theater and she was raving about this." Explore is a project-based learning experience where the learner has the opportunity to self-select from within a broad menu of possibilities, attending, listening, participating in live readings or discussions, exploring the environment, and clicking on objects linked to the online resources. Explore does not assume that the language is being shared in the classroom. It integrates the language through environmental design and through live presentations of the source material. One of the elements included in future Explores, specifically for classroom use, will be the customized virtual tours. The teacher can project the virtual environment on a large screen in their class and explore the world through a teacher-controlled avatar. The class can ask questions of and hear live readings from the source material from a member of the Seanchai staff who meets them and guides them through their visit. This will be part of a package that is included with a printed study guide and the curricular materials. The visit to the live performance at the theater or museum exhibit then becomes the ultimate destination. We'll be opening our second Explore next month in Kitely, once again, in partnership with Tacoma Little Theater. The new project, Explore Anton Chekhov and the Absurd, will be in support of their production of Christopher Durang's 2013 Tony Award-winning play, Vanya, Sonia, Masha, and Spike. The play uses characters and elements from the plays of the Russian author and dramatist Anton Chekhov, twisted in Durang's absurdist style to illustrate how we are often our own worst enemies, allowing old resentments and emotional baggage to keep us from moving forward with our lives. I'd like to share with you something that we learned from that first Explore. We had several metaverse tour groups with folks from all over the world visit The Great Gatsby, and while we did present more traditional stand and deliver readings from the novel, for these large groups, we did something different. We gave them a brief orientation of the layout of the build, and then we read them from the novel on stream. for 20 or 30 minutes and allowed them to explore the entire environment freely while listening. One of the interesting things that we observed from these sessions was that people did not spread out individually or in pairs during the tours. They tended to explore in groups, clicking on links together, commenting on the story, the environment, and the resources together. A self-selected communal learning experience whose validity appeals to all ages. One of our ongoing projects at Seanchai Library in Second Life that also follows this model is the Dickens Project, which we first beta tested in 2012 to further explore how people would interact with an environment designed to support live presentations of specific pieces of literature. It was a test that proved to be very successful and which we've expanded yearly and applied to our current installation at the Linden Endowment for the Arts Region 9, where you can explore a virtual Baker Street that supports live presentations from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Return of Sherlock Holmes, and a featured book area that is a 100-meter island dedicated to a specific book being presented in a series of readings each month. In February, we presented Tracy Garvis Graves' New York Times bestseller On the Island. Currently, we're featuring O.R. Melling's The Hunter's Moon, the first book in her Chronicles of Faith series. In April, we'll be presenting a novelization of Doug Trumbull's 1972 science fiction film, Silent Running. And we'll conclude our last month in Leah presenting one of this year's Newbery Honor books, Kimberly Brubaker Bradley's The War That Saved My Life. I'd like for you to engage. Yeah, I think we're going to try this. I'm going to go for this, Lear. I'd like for you to engage in an experiment of imagination with me. Now, for years, when I was in the theater, I avoided productions of A Christmas Carol, if I could, because I'd never read the novella. Then, thanks to Seanchai Library, I finally did. And I discovered that the dialogue of the story, while memorable, and that many of us can quote, is only the tip of the iceberg of why the story remains popular over a century after it was written. The text itself, the words, evoke at every turn thoughts and ideas that engage the reader. And I have read it out loud every year for the last 7 years, and I learn something new each time I do it. So, I'd like to explore some non-dialogue language from that work with you. And what I want you to do is close your eyes, wherever you are, and just listen to the words that I'm going to present. Now, if you're deaf or hard of hearing, then focus on the words that Lear is putting in local chat. What I want you to do is focus on the words and let your mind visualize what it will, inspired by the words. Nothing fancy coming out of my Reser this time, just you and your imagination. Okay, here we go. In came a fiddler with a music book and went up to the lofty desk and made an orchestra of it and tuned like 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast, substantial smile. In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came the 6 young followers whose hearts they broke. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. In came the housemaid with her cousin, the baker. In came the cook with her brother's particular friend, the milkman. In came the boy from over the way who was suspected of not having board enough from his master, trying to hide himself behind the girl from next door, but one who was proved to have had her ears pulled by her mistress. In they all came, one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing, some pulling. In they all came anyhow and everyhow. Away they all went, 20 couples at once, hands half round and back again the other way, down the middle and up again, round and round in various stages of affectionate grouping. Old top couple always turning up in the wrong place. New top couple starting off again as soon as they could get there. All top couples at last and not a bottom one to help them. When this result was brought about, old Fezziwig, clapping his hands to stop the dance, cried out, "Well done!" And the fiddler plunged his hot face into a pot of porter especially provided for that purpose. But scorning rest upon his reappearance, he instantly began again, though there were no dancers yet, as if the other fiddler had been carried home exhausted on a shutter, and he were the brand new man resolved to beat him out of sight or perish. there were more dances. There were forfeits and more dances. There was cake. There was negus. There was a great piece of cold roast. There was a great piece of cold boiled. There were minced pies and plenty of beer. But the great effect of the evening came after the roast and boiled, when the fiddler, an artful dog, mind, the sort of man who knew his business better than you and I could have told him, struck up Sir Roger de Coverley, and then old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig, top couple too, with a good stiff piece of work cut out for them, 3 or 4 and 20 pair of partners, people who were not to be trifled with, people who would dance and had no notion of walking. When the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up, and Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side of the door, and shaking hands with every person individually as he or she went out, wished him or her a Merry Christmas. Words. Words matter. Language is the heart and soul of our stories, past, present, and yet to come. Now that I've spent some effort in today's presentation talking about spoken word and the role that it can play in language arts engagement, it is one path. I believe the crucial point is to challenge ourselves as we move into the next steps of development of virtual education, to renew our commitment to the important relationship between language and images. It should reflect how we design the tools we create, how we incorporate the language of the works we teach into those tools, both literally and figuratively. Looking into that future, embracing new technologies that increase immersion, like Oculus Rift, new building techniques, scripting, we can continue to challenge ourselves with new ways to engage the audience we seek and serve. I think we should dream, too, of the innovations that would further impact what we do. I am very conscious of the people that, as an all-volunteer staff focused on spoken word, Seanchai Library does not serve. As we move from a world of ADA compliance to universal standards of accessibility, I dream of tools that would help in the visual interpretation of spoken word events. ASL, American Sign Language for Virtual Worlds. What could that be? I know from my own experience in the real world that a well-interpreted event by someone gifted in ASL interpretation is beautiful and evocative. I have a clear memory of a performance of A Little Night Music that I produced many years ago, where the ASL interpretation made me weep as much as Sondheim's haunting music. So I dream of being able to provide virtual story experiences for the deaf and hard of hearing that are more than just plain text, but that reflect the oral interpretation of the words presented. I have presented for you today a wide expanse of what Seanchai Library does to produce and promote language arts programming, and I hope your imagination has been well and truly sparked. I have spoken of and shown you everything from the simple to the complex. The foundation of truly meaningful engagement in a virtual experience, educational or cultural, still always starts and ends with me and you. Two people interacting with the aid of the virtual world. That is the magic of stories. The giving and the receiving, that is the art of language arts. To receive the resource list of the things that I've referenced in this presentation, please click on the green spiraled box. I would like to thank Lear Lobo and I Am Beck and Letty Luckstone and Phelan for their support in bringing this session to this year's conference. Thank you for your kind attention today. And Lear, I'm going to let you decide if we have enough time for anyone to ask any questions, if anybody actually has one.
Yes, please. We do have time for questions.
That's the great thing about being late in the program.
Well, no, it's only 5:48 here.
Oh, cool. Cool. Yeah, but
So
I don't know that there's not anybody. Yeah, there's not anybody after us, I don't think. So that's kind of the nice thing about it.
Let me type that. Any questions?
We get those. Yeah, I'm bringing up the rear. It's totally
a wonderful spot. Most good things come at the end.
good. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope I hope if you just had one little thing that's one idea. It may not even have been something that I said directly. If there's something that I said that sparked some new idea in you, I'm going to feel really, really great.
Well, I was amazed by the breathtaking amount of work you covered in such a short time frame, and so many incredible authors and stories and imagery and and I was trying to take photos too while doing all that.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's interesting. Gwen has actually just asked me a question in private
Great.
chat, and she's asking about the availability of the Sims in possibly. Actually, we're reformatting how we do the islands, how we do the Explore property in OS. Because of the advent in Kitely of being able to have 3x3 region worlds. We're actually reformatting it, and Gatsby is going to be available again because we're going to reformat 3x3, put the orientation island in the center square. Is that where Paul Lynde sat? Anyway, in the center square, so that we have one orientation center for the entire area, and then have bridges and connections that go out. So we can actually have multiple Explore experiences on their own islands within the same data unit, so to speak. We're actually talking about seeing if we can export our Baker Street from Leah 9 when we close there in May, and export it to OpenSim and give Sir Arthur Conan Doyle a shake on the Open Metaverse. Did that answer your question, Gwen?
She's probably wanting to know when she can get a copy. Gwen and I do research together.
We can talk. We can talk. Well, we can. Oh, yes. Should we confess that the first presentation of the first featured book had a tsunami? Yes, that is, in fact, what we did. That is one of the things I think for the classroom application that becomes the hardest thing, at least within the United States specifically. It has to do, with school policies, but also has to do with terms of service. That's why we're really kind of eager to try out the whole virtual classroom tour idea, so that we can set up a model where there is an adult clearly in control of the avatar, and to see how that works. I don't know exactly how it works, but I think that it'll work. For years, companies, specifically theater companies, where most of my experience is, have tried to arrange for people to go out to the schools, which is the best possible situation. The problem is it's hugely time consuming of resources to try and arrange, to try and coordinate, and to make happen. And this is something that is worth experimenting to. It's still trying to keep the experience reactive to the specific classroom experience, but maybe might be a little more. Yeah, it might be a little more a little easier to manage.
Any other questions?
Thank you for letting me res stuff all around you. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, that's what I love about it. This 3D, centerpiece in which we're part of the stage. That reminds me of the first time I saw the Phantom of the Opera and the chandelier exploded above my head. I was like, oh yeah.
Exactly. I came into Second Life almost 8 years ago, doing theater, doing arts advocacy, and I started going to theaters and was just disappointed to see that they were all building a box and putting seats in it and building what would be a traditional, corporeal set when I'm going, what are you mad? You could, when you could immerse and drop your audience into the world of the play in 3 dimensions, why would you want to build a theater? And we've had, fortunately, some theater companies and performance companies that have actually done that, have bridged that gap and started to embrace a virtual theater craftsmanship that looks at the environment as a 3-dimensional experience. Something you couldn't possibly afford to do in the real world unless your name was Disney. You couldn't possibly immerse an audience for the same amount of resources in a 3-dimensional environment specific to a work or a play. And yet here you can do it and you can save it and you can bring it out and do it again.
Thanks. Awesome session.
Thank you, Lear. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. I hope you had a great time, and I hope there's still one more, and Bryn's still awake. God bless you, sir. Leah 9 is up through the end of May. So we have more featured stories. There's 1 or 2 events going on there every week, in addition to our regular schedule back at our home on the Bradley University Sim. So there's lots still going on there and going to go on there. So, including in about a week, Seanchai Library celebrating its 8th anniversary in Second Life. That's like living forever in the virtual world.
How many years was that? 9?
8, actually, 2008. So this is March 20th, 2008. So this Sunday, it's 8 years. And we went from being a feature on the West of Ireland estate to now we don't have as big a real estate presence in Second Life, except we do now. I mean, at least thanks to this Leah grant for 6 months we have additional space. And I don't think I'm telling tales out of school to say that Winlight Magazine and John of Winlight Magazine have already talked about sponsoring the Dickens Project next year. So the Dickens Project will happen in partnership with Winlight Magazine. But we also have a huge amount of virtual property in Kitely. And we also have a branch library in Worlds because they asked us. Oh, sorry, can't tell you. Don't know. That's above my pay grade. I got a lot to do between now and the end of May, and so I'm not worrying about June 1st until it comes. Some people have expressed some interest in some elements of Crazy Yeats, and we'll just have to see what happens. You got to know that the stuff that we built, purpose built for that, we're going to save because we are. No, but I do encourage you to go over there and take a look. There'll be lots going on, lots of different things, or lots of different ways to engage literature over there. So, okay, I'm going to be quiet now.
No, you're fine. I want to thank everyone for coming, and back over to you.
Cool. So great. So Have a great rest of your, it's great to see so many faces that I know and so many new faces. Have a great rest of your Friday. Get a great rest of the conference. There's still lots of great stuff going on tonight. There's a performance by Avatar Repertory Theater at 7 o'clock. I don't know if that's here or in Open Sim. I'm not sure. And then there's still great stuff going on tomorrow, so be sure and check it all out.